So it's a new year, and that means new things,
Always
new
means new
initiatives.
things. Yep.
And one of the things that business owners struggle with, one of the many things, but one of the things business owners struggle with is I get overloaded, they get overloaded, and then they need help. But it's what to do when you get the help. So, you go out, you find somebody, you think they're going to be great, and then what happens? Like, what's the typical thing that happens right there? Where does it all go wrong? Because
Well,
I think we've all been in that experience where we hire somebody and we think they're going to do a lot of work for us, and then it's like, what happened? It's like they don't get it, I don't get it, it's just not working.
right. I
What
mean,
happens
it,
there?
it could be even they're like you said, they're hiring new people, or it could be they already have a staff and they're not using the staff to the full potential. So owners get in the habit of, you know, owners and managers get in the trap of what we can call the owner's trap. That everybody kind of comes to them for all the problems, all the questions, and then instead of the owner teaching somebody how to handle that or have the systems in place where it doesn't get to them, they just say, "I'll just handle it quick and be done with it," so that they don't have to worry about it anymore. But like you say, what ends up happening is all of a sudden they have staff that he's complaining because they're not doing any work. Or two, you want to hire somebody new and you do hire them, and the same thing, they just don't know what to do because you don't tell them what to do. And then the owner feels like, geez, I can't ever go on vacation because if I go on vacation, I've got twice as much work when I come back. I mean, those are just signs that you're not effectively delegating the work to other employees. The employees are there to serve you and the business.
Right.
They're not just there to make your ego bigger because, hey, I've got 10 employees. I mean, that's not what you want to do.
Yeah, that's 10 mouths to feed.
Yeah. So, but some people have that ego problem. They think that the more employees I can tell people I have, the better it looks for me. And it's not always the case.
I saw an email that actually came from you the other day, and it said a business owner sells 12 employee business for $17 million. And I'm thinking, that's more the direction I'm thinking. But I know a lot of businesses that are doing 1 million that need 12 employees.
Correct.
And, not to say that that's not necessary sometimes, but the goal, like you said, is not to have more employees. So when we're talking about delegation, I think this brings up something we might want to at least lay the foundation before we go into delegation is you do have to hire the right people. You do need to know
Correct.
how to recruit. You do need to bring the right people in. But for the context of what we're talking about today, we're going to make an assumption.
That you have the right people in place, yes.
You've hired the right people and you've given them the right responsibility as far as you've hired them for the right role in your business.
Correct. Yeah.
Right? You know what they're good at. They know what they're good at. They're here to do it. Now it's time to give them the work. And this is the fall apart thing where what is it that causes it to fall apart, do you think? Like what's happening? Like why doesn't it work? Like why does delegation go wrong?
Well, I think delegation goes wrong for, like I mentioned earlier, it's the owner thinks that I can just get it, I'll just might as well get it done now because I can get it done quicker. The owner thinks that they can get it done quicker, which is probably the case because it's their business, they want to know what to do, they want to get it done, so they usually can get it done quicker. But what they don't realize is if they delegate correctly, somebody else can do that thing just as quick as them, and then they can go on to bigger and better things that help the company grow, help the company run more efficiently, so that not only is he happy, his employees are happy. So I think that that's where some of the biggest issues come into when they're delegating. They just think that I'm gonna have to spend all this time up front, teaching this person how to do something or delegating properly, when they don't realize how much time they're going to save after they spend all that time up front. Then they don't have to spend any more time on it anymore because one, they should have documented what they were doing for that delegation, so it's now an operating procedure, so it should never come back to them.
So that brings me to the clip. We did a great video on standard operating procedures, so
Yeah.
it'd be worth going back and checking that out, just for anyone that's listening to this. So that brings up such a good point. So maybe the first step in delegation is having the right expectation,
Right.
as a business owner, that
Yeah.
it's going to take more time on the front end. Like, yes, you can do the task faster. We get that. The person you hired is not going to be as good as you in day one. and that's okay. But this is a hump you have to get through. You got to be willing to put it in. Is that fair?
That's fair. And a lot of business owners, they don't look at it as, they just look at that current time savings when they should be looking at what's my time savings going to be after I get this done. And I think it's because a lot of business owners don't know the true business cycle. And what I mean by business cycle is there's like 3 levels of a business. You've got the systems. You've got the employees, and you've got the owners. Owners think that they can kind of control everything, but if you look at it the correct way, you've got the systems that should manage the business for you. You should have all your systems in place, standard operating procedures, so that your business kind of runs on its own. Then what happens is your employees manage those systems for you. So the employees manage those systems that run the business. And then what the owner's job really should be is to manage the employees. It shouldn't be in the day-to-day work doing all of that. It should be in managing those employees. And if they're delegating effectively, this cycle works very, very well.
So I think that kind of brings us to maybe a good question is why is delegation a critical skill? Why?
Oh, it not only makes your life easier, it makes your employees' life easier. It feels like it empowers your employees because they're managing something new. It gets something off your desk so that you can just manage the employee and how it does. So, I mean, it's just critical on making your whole business run better.
And it's what kind of, it allows you to start multiplying yourself, right?
Right. Yeah. So you're going to be able to have, instead of these 10 tasks that you used to do all the time, you delegate it down to 1 or 2 people, and all of a sudden you've got 10 more tasks that come into play that help the business grow, help that. A lot of owners just look at how to get it done, when really they should be looking at who to get it done. And it shouldn't be them. They can't be all hats, like you said. They may keep one of the hats because they're really, really, really good at it and really helps the business. But overall, you should be hiring the people in the areas that you're weakest at, so that they can help the business grow, and everybody works on their specialties and their strengths, and the company will just keep growing. And maybe It won't grow, but maybe you can run the business without having to be there 85 hours a week. So you're there less time, but you're making just as much money. What's wrong with that?
Sign me up. Sign me up for that. It does bring into, you were talking a little bit about ego before, and it reminds me of, it's really easy to fall into the trap when you let your ego get the best of you, that you think, well, I do the best job at X or Y or whatever it is. I'm really good at that. And, you have to put your ego down and realize that there are people that are better at you at almost every skill in your business. And
if
leaning into that.
Yeah, if you're hiring correctly, hopefully you find those people, or at least they're you're equal in getting stuff done.
It's you do have to develop a desire to surround yourself with talent. That doesn't diminish you. You are the leader in the business, and when you bring talented people in your team, they're playing for your team.
Right.
The goal as a business owner is not to be the superstar at everything, and that's an important thing in this delegation thing. To realize that there are people that can do an excellent job if you prepare them to do it. If you do a good job of, setting them up for success.
Yep. Yeah. If you set them up for success, it not only off your plate, but it empowers them because, hey, my superior trusts me in doing this job and they've trained me correctly to do it. Or after a while, after I get used to the job and they delegate something down to me and tell me what it is, it empowers me to actually say, they're open to communication. I can say, well, what if we did it this way? So maybe you can actually help improve it. The employees can actually help improve the task because they're going to have a different perspective for you. You're going to be looking over here. They look at it this way, and you can kind of maybe combine the two and come up with an even better policy. A different set of eyes is not always a bad thing. It can be a very good thing.
Right. I was reading a book, and I can't remember which book this was, but it was talking about a company a company that had grown, had done a good job what they did, run by this lady, and you know, she built this team around her, and anytime someone was hired into the team, they would go to these board meetings. And you know, as a new employee, you know, they wanted to put their knowledge out there. They wanted to share their ideas, but they quickly realized that anytime they had an idea or a thought that in any way deviated from the wisdom of the all-knowing master, you know, the owner of the company, it got shot down, and got shot down in a demeaning way. She'd lay them out and put them down right there in front of everybody, to the point that every employee was then trained to just repeat back what she said.
Yeah.
And so instead of creating an organization where they had these 10 or 20 minds leading it, it was her, and they were just like, good job, that's right, you know, that's whatever you want.
Yep. So instead of running in harmony, you know, 20 people running in harmony, and the business going like this, it got to that owner, and it just went, oh, we can't get any farther.
Yeah.
We can't get any farther. I mean, it just, and eventually, the owner probably won't realize it because of their ego in a situation like that. But if they look at their employees, I'm sure they have huge employee turnover in a situation like that.
Yeah.
Because the ones that are good are going to say, I'm not going to stay here and just agree to everything they say, because I'm not going to get anywhere.
Yeah. And this whole idea of delegation is kind of at the root at it. People need ownership. That's a psychological need. They need to know that they have something that they can lean into, that they have responsibility for, that they have decision-making power.
Mm-hmm.
And proper delegation is part of creating that atmosphere, right?
Yeah. Like that atmosphere, it goes back to that owner realizing that, hey, if I give this person responsibility, and even if they don't quite happen to do it the way you do, but they get it 95% done the way you like, that's like 100% better than any other company that doesn't do any delegating. Gives them the responsibility. You don't have to worry about it. It's taken care of. Maybe not the way you exactly would do it, but it's taken care of. The customer's happy. The other employee, if somebody's reporting to that employee now, that employees they're all happy.
Right. And that's, what a great thing.
Yeah, and that's one thing you can just go to, gone. I don't have to worry about that anymore.
Yeah, and I have to think, like, you're listening to this conversation, and you're thinking, what a better world it would be that I didn't have to worry about X.
Right.
I don't have to worry about this one thing. I don't have to worry about, even if it's something as simple as sending invoices and following up on it so that I don't end up with a pile of this accounts receivable nightmare. Or, for me in my business, it's like knowing that when the copy goes out, that I know that it's going to get distributed to all the channels and proofread, and I don't have to keep like, all right, did that happen? Did this happen? Did that happen? Oh, let me go check.
Well, and then there's that opposite side of this delegation. You're getting all these positives. Well, this really isn't a negative per se, but what happens is that you get all these delegations in place, these policies and procedures, companies running smooth. If something gets to you that should never get to you, one, because it's something new in your standard operating procedure you have to do, or two, somebody deviated from the normal systems and procedures, you've got to have an employee meeting or figure out, is it one employee or is it our system? But it's going to make you aware of problems of the company running smoothly, because all of a sudden they come back to you. All of a sudden they're gone for a year, this issue, and all of a sudden, a year and a half, a little over a year, all of a sudden it comes on your desk again. You're like, this should have never got here. What happened? And then it helps you manage your people and your business and your delegation tasks very well.
Yeah, and I guess from my perspective, I'm thinking about like growing up with my dad, and my dad ran a building business.
Okay.
And he liked to have his hand on everything, and he liked to keep that control on it. And I think for him, I've always watched him in business, and his struggle is releasing the thing, and that's one of the struggles we face in delegation, being like, it's okay to do this, but you're right, that's really not the only side to it. And then the other side to it is haphazard delegation. And
correct.
I one of my favorite books, E-Myth, and I'm sure you know E-Myth, right?
Yep. Michael Gerber. Yeah.
And one of the best concepts in that book is defining the difference between delegation and abdication.
Yes.
And I probably fall more on the side to erroring that way, not being afraid that someone else can't do a good job, but just saying, I don't want to do this anymore here.
Right.
And that's not delegation either. That's
Nope,
not
that is
delegating
not.
a task. That's saying, I don't want to do this anymore, and I'm just going to give it away.
Yeah, I don't like
And
doing it, and if I give it to somebody else, it's gone, and I don't have to see it anymore.
yeah, but that's dangerous too. And I think those are the two pitfalls. People, they don't want to let something go, so they're not empowering the people they hire,
No.
right, to do it. And then people who are giving jobs to people, but they're not setting them up for success with that job.
No, because then it comes back to them. Because then they'll all of a sudden come back to them, and then that owner that did it that way would say, "I told you, I gave you that task. Why are you coming back to me?" So in essence, it can almost make the employees look bad because truly they didn't get the true what needs to be done with this delegated task. They just got it shoved to them, and then they go back to the person that gave it to them and say, "Well, what about this part? I don't care what you do. You take care of it." I mean, it just makes the employees look bad, and it makes the owner look bad, and it can cause a lot of problems if it's not done correctly.
But here's the good news. We've got a checklist here, right?
We've got a checklist, yes.
We've got a checklist so you don't have to do it the wrong way. Like, this is not a scare tactic. It's okay to delegate, but you need to have a system that you do it, just like everything else. So let's start here with this smarter acronym. Explain to me what that is and why that's the place to get started on delegation.
Well, as we've been talking about, delegation is SMART. So this is a very good acronym to have.
Right.
I mean, it's a 7-step process to help you analyze the task and what needs to be done to make the delegation done correctly. Mm-hmm. So you need to be specific about what needs to get delegated. You need to select your individual or team. I'm sorry. That's our next 9 steps. I'm ahead of myself here. Let's go back here. So the smarter acronym is seven categories. You want to be specific on what is delegated. You want it to be measurable. So you don't want to just say, get this job done. You want to say, get this job done. It should take you a day or two, come back to me, and you should be able to measure it somehow. Or we should be able to get 100 emails out within an hour, blah, blah, blah. But there should be some type of measurable task when you delegate down to somebody. Mm-hmm. It needs to be agreed upon. So when you actually, what that means is when you actually talk to the person, make sure that it's agreed upon and both of you are agreed as to what needs to be done and what needs to be delegated, so that there's no misunderstandings of them coming back to you. It needs to be realistic. You can't go into an employee and say, hey, I started this business. I brought $3 million worth of sales in the first year. Here, you go do it now.
Right.
It has to be a little bit realistic, saying, hey, I got
Right.
to this. We're going to learn this over time, but here's the first task that you need to learn in my system. So, and it does need to be time bound. So instead of it being an open-ended thing, you just want to say, hey, here's the job. This is what needs to be done. You should be able to get it to me by tomorrow morning. You want to put that time in there so that the employee actually knows too, what's the deadline for this, what's my expectations, and make sure I'm ready to go when that day comes back. Of course, it needs to be ethical. I mean, you don't delegate saying, go rob a bank for me. I mean, you don't want to do stuff like that. It still should be ethical. And then the other part, going back to our previous video on operating procedures, this should be recordable as a task. And what that means is recordable, that either you record it as to what needs to be done, or the employee records the steps that need to be done for this task. So when you delegate it, saying, this needs to be recordable, so show me what steps you did to get this done. You can actually compare it to the steps you did, and you can come up with a nice operating procedure on how to do things.
That is good advice. And so part of this is knowing whether this task is the right task to delegate, because until you've nailed these things down,
right,
it's not ready to delegate, right?
Right. So this just gives you a nice little acronym. You're looking at something, you can just say SMART and just go through these, SMART, SMARTer, whatever you want to use, and just say, are all these parts met? And if they are, the task should be able to be delegated. And if it doesn't match, which part of the process is off? So why isn't it? Maybe it's not realistic. Why isn't it realistic? Why isn't it time bound? Or you can figure out which part of the system of this task is not eligible to be used yet.
So, is it fair to say? And then I think when we think about delegation, when I think about delegation, I think about employees. But this can apply to delegating tasks to contractors, subcontractors too, right?
Oh yeah. In fact, it's probably very good for subcontractors because you're paying them probably more per hour or than your employees. So there's, you're going to subcontractors. They have a very specific thing that you need done. And if there's a misunderstanding, that specific thing that you think can be done is not done the way you want. And and it's the same thing. If you did this delegation smarter before you hired the contractor, you should be able to go in there. One of the steps is go over the task, make sure both parties agree. Is this agreed that this is what's going to happen? And so then there shouldn't be any problems. The subcontractor should be able to get the work done because you put a time bound on the task, and then they come back with their product, and there shouldn't be any issues because everything was agreed upon beforehand.
Yeah, and that's an important thing with subcontractors because you can't tell them when to work, but you can set up contracts about the expectations between the two parties.
Correct. Yep.
So that's just a really important thing to go through, especially if you're using subcontractors. Like one of the frustrations, I've been around it my whole life. Like I mentioned being around construction.
Yep.
And I've always seen the struggles, and then I've experienced it in my own business. That when you subcontract something, they're not on your clock.
No, they're not.
I can't just be like, stop that real quick. I need you to do this right now.
Right.
It doesn't work that way. And so if you don't set these kinds of expectations with people, which is a huge part of delegating is expectations, right?
Yep.
That what ends up happening is, well, both parties get frustrated, but definitely if you're the one delegating, you get frustrated. You're like, I've got someone else. I've got a customer, a client depending on something, and I'm sitting here in the wind like.
I was going to say, there's usually that third person that gets involved too, because you're not only to the subcontractor, you've got your client class, / customer that you need to report to as well. That the subcontractor could be affecting you.
Yeah, and so you have to think about, as a business owner, you are controlling so much of the reputation and the face of your business when you're delegating tasks. And how you delegate tasks is going to really determine what your business looks like when it's delivering those things, right? I mean, and I guess I think about it in businesses where the main tasks that are getting delegated affect the customer base. I mean, I guess it could affect other things, but when you're the one delegating, you're probably putting yourself in the middle of something,
right?
Either between you and someone that you're reporting to, whether that's a client or a superior or a board or whatever,
or a vendor or whatever.
Yeah. So it's very, very important that you do that. It resonates with me. So I guess I'm sitting here like, I know that that's something I've really had to learn a lot in the last couple of years is improving my skills at setting those very clear expectations. Just because I thought it doesn't mean they know it.
Right, and you may be thinking of it, but as you're agreeing upon it, you may not put that out, and then this person says this is that you go, oh no, I forgot about this too. So that's where just making sure that you're all prepared for what the delegation part, where everything hopefully gets out of your head, and if it doesn't, when this person responds back saying, okay, I think I have to do this, this, and this, you can go, oh no, I forgot this too as well. So it helps you, because as owners, same thing happens. They like to keep too much in their mind instead of trying to write it down. So this just helps clear their mind.
Yeah. I want you to know that these video sessions, there's a level of therapeutic thing going on for me here. And I don't know if I appreciate it or not, but I think it's a good thing. But it's definitely like, I'm like, ooh, I need to write something down real quick. So okay, so let's talk about. There's 9 steps. There's a 9-step process to delegation, and we've kind of started into step 1.
Correct.
We've kind of started diving into what does step 1 look like, which is making sure that your task, what you have outlined for it, is suitable for delegation, right? So that's. Was there anything else in step 1 that we need to cover?
Dang dogs.
Yeah.
See another dog outside and she's growling. So no, you need to define the task. So step 1 would be going through the smarter, making sure that everything's defined, and you go from there. So then step 2 was let's start going through the steps here now. Step 2, you need to make sure you select the right individual in your team or team. Like we talked about subcontractors that can work for subcontractors. And that's where it comes back to initially, like we assume that everybody's hired in your organization for the specific job and their strengths that they're good for. You need to select that person. What are you going to get out of it? What are they going to get out of it? Is it going to help you, or is it going to be more of a pain because you've dealt with this person in the past and you know what happens when you give them this type of task? And then is it going to help them? Is it something that's maybe below the level of work they're doing now? That might not be the right individual. Maybe it's way higher than what they're trained for right now. So taking into account all that, because you're assessing their, part 3 is assessing their ability in the training. So maybe this person's like on the verge, and maybe if we gave them like a 2-hour training session on what needs to be done there, then this person would be perfect for delegating this task to.
So on point 3, is this kind of where we'd be thinking about potentially, is there an SOP for this? Because that's part of training, right?
Yeah, that's part of the training. But at the same time, this may be a new task or procedure that needs to get updated into the SOPs. So the training might not come into play. The training may be more along what's actually in the task, as well as whether it's recorded already as an SOP. And that's where, if you go to the employee with this task and why they have to do an SOP on it, that's part of level 4. Explain the reasons why you're doing this delegation and what needs to be done. And if an SOP needs to be written, you can explain why and say, hey, this is a brand new issue that's come up that we need to implement, that we need a policy written on.
So let me just stop and ask, and maybe this is the obvious question, but I feel like it's begging to be asked. Why do you need to explain to somebody why it's important?
Well, you can do it exactly like you said. I need this done, but at the same time, is that really empowering the employee as to why this needs to be done for the business? It's not just for you. You got to explain that this is for the business, so that they can have a paycheck, so that they can go home and feel good about themselves. I mean, that's in the extreme level of it. But the big thing is that you're explain the reasons why this needs to be done, whatever it may be, new task, going to a new person, whatever else, But then you tell them that this is for the betterment of the business. It's a bottom line thing that we think that you are eligible to do this type of task, which is going to help the business grow.
Right.
I mean, you kind of I think you should almost give your reasons as to why it's not only going to help the business, it's going to help them. I mean, how much of this is going to help the business? But don't just say, do this because I'm the owner or I'm the boss. You need to, because the next time you do that, they may take that task and go, screw that, and just throw it off to the side and don't care about what your time-bound measurements are. But I hate to say it, but if a manager's doing that, saying, hey, get this done, they're probably not giving them a timeline.
Right.
That's when they come in 2 hours later and say, well, why isn't this done yet? I gave it to you.
Right. I think, and I know that was kind of an obvious question, but I think it needs to be said, giving that consideration, we do better work when there's something important attached to the work, when we know the why in it, when we can put our heart into it. A successful organization, whether you're somebody that's working as an intern in the proverbial mailroom, right, as probably not as big a thing, but whether you're working there or you're working at the top of the company, understanding that the cog in the wheel that you are means something. Right. People depend on you. The job depends on you. The company depends on you. And that, when you take pride in something, we just do a better job. Right. When you take pride in it, you do a better job. If it's just something you have to do so you don't get yelled at or get written up, you're going to do a terrible job. And I think about the mentality. A good friend of mine used to run nursing homes, and he had 200 employees whose sole goal was to not get written up, or at least not get caught doing something to get written up.
Yeah, so that
they didn't do a good job. They didn't do a good job.
They did their job. So what they do is they do that minimum that needs to be done, so they don't get written up or made an example of. Whereas if you can empower your employees to do that good job because you're giving them a good explanation, they're going to feel even better about themselves because I did it the way it was supposed to. I don't have to worry about getting written up because we had total agreed upon. And if they do come back at me, you can say, we agreed upon this before we started. So it kind of empowers your employees to feel they have some responsibility in all this.
And we should move. I want to get to the next points, but I do want to say this is the piece that addresses that part where the business owner fears the job is not going to get done as well.
Correct.
This is the part where you can make an impact on how well the job gets done.
Right. The reason is just because it's not, you can make it, bottom line, it may be to get it off your plate, but there's no reason to just say, like you said, here, take this, get it done. Give them a reason, make them feel good, saying you're a valued employee. I know that you can handle this task. It's going to make the business run better. It's going to help me work on more things that will help the business even more.
Yeah.
I mean, so you can spin it as a positive, even though the bottom line negative is that you're still trying to get it off your desk.
Exactly. So brings us to number 5. So now they know why it's important. What's next?
Right. Now they know it's important. State what the required results are. So it may be a procedure to take care of a client. It may be on how to invoice. So state the required results, saying, when we know a job is done, we need the invoice done within an hour. So this procedure will set up so that they know when jobs are done, they have to get the end invoice done within an hour. That's stating the required results.
Okay.
X plus Y equals, Z. You're trying
Right.
to say this plus this gets me this required result. So
Yeah.
have a result in mind when you're, as part of your smarter. What are you looking for? What's the time bound? What's the results that you want from it?
And it can't just be do a good job.
No, it can't just be
Do a good job.
Yeah, and this goes back to the measurable part. So has your, before you're delegating, you're trying to find out what the measurable part of it is. That's part of stating the required results.
Right.
So, and then consider the resources required. Basically, it's coming down what's required to do the job, checking the people, are they in the right location? Do we have the right equipment for them to do this type of job? How much money is it going to cost me? I mean, you got to make sure that you've got all the requirements, and then agree on that deadline. Time bound. Make sure that it's done. Next thing is support and communicate. Number 8, support and communicate your people. So what they mean by support is, after you delegate the job, maybe you go back to them in a little while, or maybe it's like a week job. So they got a week timeline. Maybe after 3 or 4 days or 3 days, you go in there and say, hey, how's that task going? I just want to make sure, and I know it's a new task for you. I just want to make sure that you don't have any questions, before we get to that timeline. You can just go in there, support them, and then they can say, well, geez, I really didn't understand this part. And then you just, keep that open communication with them. Check on them, support them, make sure that they can communicate with you on this new task so that they feel that they're getting it done correctly. And
Okay.
then after the task is all done, make sure to give your employees a feedback. What did they do good? What did they do bad? What was the overall result? Maybe there was some good and bad within there, but the overall result was a good start. They clean up the bad, and then all of a sudden it's going to be a great task for them. So you're looking for that.
So this process takes you from beginning to end
Yep.
on how to delegate a task. So you got to pick something, then you got to, and then you got to assess it, and then you work through this process, and this is how you successfully delegate a task. And you get to the end and the feedback. This is an important opportunity. The first time you delegate it, it might not be perfect.
Correct.
And that's okay. That
That's
doesn't
what-
mean you shouldn't have done it. It doesn't mean you got the wrong person. It doesn't mean it means this is the part where the feedback is not just telling them, it's getting them to tell you, what did you do good or bad?
Right.
Where did they feel like that they had what they need, or that they were it was like total guesswork for them and they're stabbing in the dark.
Right.
What could have been different? And I think that's important because this is a loop, right? It's an ever improving loop that you want to get down pat, and it's going to take a few times,
Right.
just like anything else, to get into a rhythm.
And then once you get it down pat on how to do it with your employees, you can teach your employees how to do it so that they can start delegating down to somebody else.
Yeah. So that's definitely going to be a topic we're going to have to talk about is company structure and how, what effective management looks
Right.
like, and, why you need to be teaching your employees to teach as well, not just one level to them, right?
Correct. Yep.
Not today.
Not today. No, not today.
uh, so, do we want to talk about what this means? These 10 levels of delegation. Do we want to go that deep on this?
I don't know if we really want to go that deep.
Okay.
Maybe let's just mention that there's different levels of delegation.
So,
or we could actually we could almost do that as a seminar, or do that as another discussion.
Okay. I think we should come back to it. It looks like something we could probably spend some time on.
No, we could probably spend a good half hour, 45 minutes on it.
Yeah, I kind of figured. So let's wrap this up. Let's kind of sum things up on delegation.
Summing things up on delegation. Big thing on delegation. 1, don't be afraid to do it. 2, probably realize that when you start, it is going to be hard. It is not going to be an easy task, because you may feel like you're giving away company secrets or lifetime secrets when you're doing this. But it's not. It's just start getting it done, get your employees comfortable with it, and just realize the first few times it's probably not going to be very good. But that's where if you keep that open line of communication between you and your employees, get feedback on everything, both of you are going to grow at the same time as you're delegating these tasks. So you just want to use that smarter, that 7 steps talking about your tasks, the smarter technology. And then just make sure that you monitor and the results are what you want. And if they're not, either the delegation wasn't agreed upon when you did it, or they didn't do it right, or something has changed in your business. So, there's all sorts of benefits to delegations and why it gets off your desk, and if it comes back to your desk, you don't want it to. So go ahead.
No, I was gonna say these are super great tips. This is vital. I was just complimenting you on the advice.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And then, bottom line is, don't be afraid to stop. Keep delegating, keep delegating. Empowers your employees, it empowers you, helps you do stuff that makes the business grow even better yet, helps the employees feel like they are part of the business and that they're helping the business grow. And overall, all these systems that you're going to put in place, your business is going to run smoother and smoother. And in a sense, that helps with the final destination with a lot of companies. We should probably touch upon this on a webinar or seminar one day too, is that your company's going to be worth a heck of a lot more money at the end when you try to sell it, or whatever you want to do with it. If it runs smoothly and you don't want to sell it, great. Maybe you only have to work 10 hours a week. But if you get to that point in your life where you're like, I could really take the money from selling this and go out and do some different things that I really want to do with my life. That's a whole another different scenario of how delegation helps you.
I think we want to think about, running a business is hard. It's challenging.
It is challenging.
Maybe hard is the wrong word. It is challenging to grow and run a business. And why are we doing it? What's the point of all this? Why do we choose this over working in a job where someone else is thinking of all these balls that I have to keep in the air? What are you building? Are you just building a job for as long as you want to work? Are you building something that powers the next chapter? Are you building something for your kids? And if you don't do these steps, and you're not building anything for your children.
No.
But a headache that they're not going to want to have.
Yep, they're going to look at it and say, you can keep it, Dad. No thanks.
Mm-hmm. That's a fact. That's just a hard fact. And if you
little side thing on that, a lot of the reasons why the kids say that is because they saw their dad working or their mom working 70 hours a week on their business, and they're like, you know what? I don't want to do that.
Yeah. Right? And they didn't just see the time on it. They saw how stressed out their parents were
Correct.
over it.
Yeah.
Not, oh man, I want to be like my dad or my mom because they own this business, and they won't remember that. They'll remember Mom and Dad was always tired. Mom and Dad was always short. They never had time to do this or do that. That's what they're going to remember.
Or Mom and Dad was never there when I got home from such and such because they were working at the office.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
this
that's
is an
just
important step. It is, but this is an important step in being able to free yourself from things that you should be freeing yourself from.
Right.
As a business owner, we all have some kind of special skill, special talent. We have something that where we bring the biggest value to our business. And if we're not delegating the other stuff, there's a good chance our time to do that special thing is going to be limited. So,
Yep, like you said, there's something in your gut that told you you wanted to go out on business on your own. And you went and took that step. You know, you went out and started your own business, and now you're ready for delegation. I mean, you took the step. So now you're an owner. Now you got to take that next step. If I want to delegate, I can keep this company growing, or I can make it run smoother for myself, so that I can get back to why I went into business.
absolutely. Yeah. Something we all could be thinking about more. Well, thanks, Tom. This was awesome, and we'll do it again.
All right, thanks, Brad. Talk to you soon.